Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to LFG Live. So, as we all know, hopefully, today is Friday the 13th. Looks like I'm having some camera issues, so I'm going to hold on for a quick second and try to fix these. Not sure what is going on there. Sorry about that. All right. So, again, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome again to LFG Live. This week, of course, is our second week of our People and Leadership Series month for February. Last week we spoke a bit about people first leadership, which I had a lot of fun talking about, and actually had some great conversations after talking about one of my favorite topics to talk about. But today is another one of my favorite and most misunderstood topics to talk about, which is performance improvement planning. But first, let's get our tea ready for the afternoon as we usually do on our LFG Fridays. Today's a little bit different, though. Today's a little bit different. As we know, it is Friday the 13th. For anyone who knows me, knows my family, we are a big horror movie, anything horror family. So we were super excited when local Icarus Brewing Company announced they had a Friday the 13th event today and had some T-shirts for sale. So, of course, I picked one up, had a quick lunch with my wife there, and brought home our Sip Sip hard iced tea Arnold Palmer. So that is our tea for the day. Not my normal traditional hot tea, but still fun for today. So again, one of my favorite things. Let's talk about performance improvement planning. The reason it is one of my favorite things to talk about is because it is so misunderstood and so underutilized. When you hear performance improvement planning, and this actually happened with one of the last companies I created their performance improvement planning for, as soon as I mentioned it, the CEO slash owner of the company went, ugh. So well, why is that the reaction? And he said, "Well, I hate writing people up. I hate telling people what they're not doing great. I don't like going through all the negativity with people." And I said, "See, that's where the error is, right? Um, the error there is think about what the word is and what we're talking about: performance improvement planning. It is not a beatdown. It is not a termination. It is performance improvement planning. And don't get me wrong, the end of the process certainly could be a termination, but that's not the goal of the beginning of the process. The process is to increase performance." So a lot of the times when we see, especially like that last owner I just spoke about, was a very nice guy, very employee focused, really loved his people, and just a super sweet and nice guy. They avoid these conversations until it's too late. They avoid them until it's this crazy five-alarm fire, performance issues that are impacting the team, impacting the business, and they look back and go, "Wow, I should have addressed this months ago." Or, "You know what? We've been spending 80% of our time talking about this one employee. We really should have done something differently." Or, "They're a great person, but they're really not getting their job done." Or, I don't want to be the bad guy and bring this stuff up. If you've ever said any of those things, you need to see this today because this is exactly what we're talking about. So, a performance improvement plan, what it really is, an agreement between you and the employer or the employee. What needs to change? Um, who's responsible for the change? When will it need to be changed? How is it measured? What support will we provide as an organization? And what happens if it doesn't change? And when I talked about all those things, again, go back to the example, if you remember from last week, where I talked about my son swinging a bat at baseball. It's not watching somebody swing and going, "They're pretty awful," and walking away. It's coaching them. What support will we provide is one of the most important line items I said in there. And it's how are we going to provide support to that employee to make sure they get to the level they're supposed to be at. But it's also communicating clearly what those expectations are. They have to know what success looks like, right? What performance improvement plan is not is a surprise attack on an employee, a paper trail after you've already decided you're terminating them. It's, I want to fire them, but HR says I can't fire them yet until I have a paper trail. So I'm going to work backwards to make sure I have one. Or kind of a vague, "Hey, you're not really hitting your goals. Let's make sure we're on that conversation." It has to be a true, intentioned conversation with that employee on what they need to improve, how they need to improve it, how we're going to measure it, and how we're going to help them. And when I look back at a lot of organizations that work through their performance improvement processes and why they fail is, as I mentioned a few moments ago, they start too late. They start when kind of all hope is already lost. The employee's lost faith in the organization has lost faith in the employee. It's already too late. Or they're very vague. They don't want to come down on someone too hard. They don't want to feel like they're beating them up. So they just kind of tell them do better, but don't really guide them how they should, right? So when we look at the performance improvement process, I look at it, and I was taught this years ago by one of my mentors, that it's kind of like a seesaw, right? When we start off our performance improvement process, we look at kind of 4 stages of it. And they don't have to be linear. You can, based on the severity of the incident, you can jump all the way to a stage 4 if it's something huge and big and bad that they did. But generally, if we're talking about true performance improvement, the beginning of that seesaw is the leadership's ownership, right? Meaning, I have an employee, they're not hitting their goals. I'm going to take that on as saying, I need to do the most work here. I need to look at that employee and figure out what guidance do they need. So it's sitting down with that employee, going over the numbers, figuring out, and you'll hear me say this all the time through our sessions, what obstacles are in their way, what tools do they need to be successful. We have those conversations, right? When we walk away from it, I truly believe I own that conversation of asking what they need, and I'm going to make sure that I follow up with everything they need. Now, should they continue not doing those things, it starts to tilt a little bit, right? Now, I still hold it as my responsibility, but where that phase 1 was just a conversation, phase 2 is a little bit more serious now. It's okay. We've had this conversation. I know that as a good leader, I've removed your obstacles. I've given you tools for success, but you're still not hitting those goals. Let's have a little more serious of a conversation. What needs to be done here? And I want to make sure that you understand my expectations. Usually after that conversation, we'll follow up with an email. Hey, based on what we discussed today, just wanted to recap what we're going to talk about. Within 14 days, we're going to see this change. This is what you need. This is what I'm going to do. This is what you're going to do. This is how we're going to measure you. Have that in writing. Now, if the person still isn't doing what they're supposed to be doing, it starts to tilt more, right? And it's, well, gosh, now I've had these conversations with you. We've given you everything that you've needed. We removed every obstacle. We've set expectations clear. You're still not getting it done. Then we have to question, is it a skill versus will kind of scenario? And it definitely tilts. And that's where I go into what most people would consider the formal write-up process. That's, you're just not getting the job done. We really have to have some serious conversations about that. And now the ownership is really on the employee a lot more. I'm still involved in it. I'm still there, but the ownership is a lot more on that employee now. So with that conversation, I then follow up with a formal write-up. And then the last phase really is, come on, we've done everything we had to do. We've set every expectation, given you every tool, removed every obstacle, had these conversations over and over again. At this point, we call it decision time. You need to choose if you're going to stay with the organization or not. Is this going to be a right fit? And I'll tell you, most leaders that I talk to say, well, once it gets to the decision time phase, I'm sure they're already out the door. A lot are. I'm going to be realistic about it. A lot are. But I will tell you, I've had some amazing long-term employees in the past and the career I was at for over 20 years where they got to that decision time conversation and it was no shit moment. It was a wow, I have a great opportunity here and I'm about to ruin it. I really need to turn things around. So while I can probably say it's only about 15%-ish of people who get to that point that they actually turn it around, of those 50% that turn it around, more than 2/3 of those probably turned out to be some of my best employees, some of my best teammates, because they saw the work that I was putting into it or that their leadership was putting into it. They saw the opportunity they were about to lose, and we got to highlight the fact that it was really on them to make these choices to make it a better work environment for themselves, and they were able to turn things around. So that's the 4 stages that I talk about. And when we talk about what is in these conversations, that's incredibly important, not just the 4 steps. What are we talking about? So the first layer of that is going to be our outcome metrics, the scoreboard, the KPIs, your tracker, whatever you call them in your business. It's data. Data is going to drive the behaviors. And it's funny for me to always talk about data how I do when everybody knows I'm such a people person. Well, data drives the behaviors. Data drives where I coach. So to appropriately coach my teams, I need to have the data. So I'm absolutely a data nerd. So we want to make sure we're measuring things, whether it's, with customer service response times or sales rates or error rates or production rates, depending on what industry and business that you're in, but those outcome metrics, that scoreboard. The second is the behaviors. Are they showing up on time? Are they prepared? If you've given them tools to use, like a checklist or a form of some sort, are they using it? Are they communicating clearly? All of these things. So first is the outcome metrics. Second is your behaviors. And then the last is just your system and the kind of leadership mirror, right? Did we train them? Did we give them all the tools? I keep saying that over and over again, but did we give them the tools that they need? Do they have clear SOPs? We can't hold them accountable to what we're not even sure the right process is. We can't hold them accountable after the fact that, I didn't want it that way, but I never told you that. You have to tell them that up front, right? Are your incentive programs aligned with what their mission is. Meaning, I've seen organizations in the past that had incentive programs that were counterintuitive to their goals, which didn't make any sense. The incentive program should be driving the goals and driving the behaviors towards those goals, not the opposite. And I've seen that happen in the past. So we want to look at that. And then the other part of that leadership mirror, especially if you happen to be maybe a level or two or three or however many above that individual, are their managers managing? Right. And you'll start to see that a little more if you see significant or recurring issues with the employees that are under that leader. So look at the local management as well. So when we look at those three things, those are the clear conversations we can have, right? The KPIs, the behaviors, and their environment, their leadership environment, their tool environment. And we use those three components through those 4 stages of the performance improvement process. So I think about some of the times in the past where I've used this very well and then seen some not so well. And one of the ones I can think of not too long ago was an employee who the leadership wanted to let go of. And they said, we're putting them on a PIP. And again, a lot of people know that I hate that terminology. We're not putting them on a PIP. We're putting them through a performance improvement plan. Together, we're working on it. Actually, one company that I worked with, they hated the name performance improvement plan so much, I actually had to give it a new name. I think I made it like improvement partnership program or something like that. But I had to change the name entirely because they hated the name so much because it had such negative connotations. But the one organization that I spoke to, we're going to put this person on a PIP. And I said, okay, when did we notice the issues that were coming up and what issues are they? Maybe 6-8 months ago. What? So 6-8 months ago, we noticed the issue and we're addressing it today. That's not performance improvement planning. That's saying, I kind of messed up. I should have done more. Now it's too late. Feeling a little bad on what's going on. This employee is now kind of rotted in the system and I probably need to let them go. Failure on leadership there for sure. I've also seen performance improvement plan, as I mentioned before, save amazing employees, right? Where as soon as we notice an issue coming up, we had those conversations, and having those conversations frequently, those stage 1 conversations, having them frequently is never going to be a negative. People don't perceive it as negative when it's happened consistently, like I said last week. So it's the weekly check-ins, the training, going over the key metrics, making sure we're having discussions about those measurables on a frequent basis. And if they're not hitting them, figuring out how we can move up. So the performance improvement planning, even at the lower levels or higher levels, can really turn an employee around and focus them on doing the great thing. So the last piece of this, we know the content, we know the steps, is how do we have these conversations? Because people get so afraid of them. People get so nervous about having them. And it's not that hard when people know what to expect from you as a leader. When they know the type of leader you are, they know you're a leader that truly cares about the success. It doesn't come across so harshly or so hard. But what you want to do first is set the tone. That I am here to help you succeed. I want you to win. When you win, we all win. But I want to be clear about what's working and what's not working. And I'm not going to sugarcoat everything and tell them 12 things that are great just to tell them the one that's not great. I'm going to show them a couple of highlights, but we're really going to dig into the what's not working and how I can help them. Name the gaps that are happening. Facts only. Don't embellish. Don't say, Bob from another department said this, said that. Come in with data. So I want you to be successful. Here's the data. Define the win. This is where it is. This is what winning looks like. Then offer support. Real support. Not, hey, I'm going to jump on a call with you every morning and we're going to talk for 45 minutes about how to help you. Not realistic. We're all in business. We're all busy. Never going to happen, right? So what does a real support look like in that particular scenario? That's what you're going to offer them. And be honest. Be transparent about what's going to happen should that not happen. This isn't a personal vendetta. You're not angry with that person. We have a business to run, and we have the responsibility of that business to keep that business successful for all the employees. We can't let it fail based on one person. So be honest about the stakes. If we don't see improvement by next month, we do need to make a decision about whether or not this is the right role for you or what else we may need to do to get you up to the proper level. And then, of course, confirm understanding. This isn't a conversation where you're just talking. You want to hear back from them. Now, certainly you need to continue to set that tone and control the conversation, right? If that person is coming back to you with every excuse in the book of why they can't do it, they're not taking any ownership of the processes, everything is somebody else's fault, that's going to turn the conversation one way. The other side of the conversation, though, are the folks who are going to take ownership of that. And that's going to be the majority, to be honest, that say, okay, I get it. You're right. Haven't been hitting these numbers. I appreciate your guidance. I appreciate what you're telling me. Let's work on this together. And hopefully that's the employee you're going to turn around. And if we do this the right way, there's going to be a lot of those. So again, if this is something that you're seeing in your business, We all see this in our business. Everybody's seeing it in our business. But if you need help working through these processes, that's what LeMay Fusion Group is here to do. Not only do we have the templates for these different phases, but I actually have an entire LeMay Fusion Group performance management toolkit. I share that with all my clients that are engaged in our human resources pillar, human resources and culture pillar. But if you even want just one doc or have a question or want help with one piece of this, just reach out. I'm always happy to share. You can hit us up at on our website, lemayfusiongroup.com. Shoot us a text or a call, 732-508-0580, or certainly hit us up on social media. Always happy to help, give some advice, and certainly if the LeMay Fusion Group Performance Management Toolkit or HR module can help you out, certainly looking forward to talking about that. So that's all for today. That's all for performance improvement planning. Next week, we'll be talking about accountability without micromanaging, right? Whereas standards come in and making sure you're inspecting what you're expecting, where does trust also come in as well? If you're micromanaging everything, you're not actually running your business. So today, finish your drink, even if it's a hard iced tea in the middle of the day on Friday the 13th. Finish your drink, take a deep breath, and go lead with intention today. Thanks so much, everybody.